What's going on, guys? Unknown Player here, and today in this video we're going to be looking at what I think is the best hunter exotic in Destiny 2, hands down, unless it gets nerfed, but it's something you should definitely be running on your hunter, especially in PvE. I've seen all of the hunter exotics and used most of them. I think this is the best by far, and I don't throw around that term lightly. You guys know I play as a hunter as my main character, specifically the NIGHTSTALKER, so I know what I'm talking about when I say this is really good and definitely worth paying attention to. So what exotic I'm actually referring to? Well, these are the ORPHEUS rig for the hunter, exotic boots, specifically for the NIGHTSTALKER subclass. Now, I got these on the first day of launch, so I've been using them for quite a while, basically never used anything else. So the reason these are so good is, to put it simply, you tether a large amount of enemies and you instantly get your super back, basically like having the infinite super glitch. But of course, these are exotic perks on boots, no glitching or hacking or cheating required. These are boots that give you basically an infinite super for tethering a large amount of enemies, which you should be doing anyway. So these boots are just so powerful for the PvE aspect of the NIGHTSTALKER. So looking at the perk, it's called Uncanny Arrows, provides ability energy for each enemy tethered by the shadow shot anchors. So essentially, these give you more energy for all of your items, not just the super. So the more enemies you get inside your tether that are hit by it, the more stuff you get back. So this includes your grenade, your smoke grenade, your shade step, and your super on top of it. So all abilities, these are going to get refreshed the more enemies that are tethered. So as you can see in the gameplay, this is a pretty good demonstration through this public event. This is where all the Fallen spawn in the Glimmer extractions, and all the enemies kind of come out of these ships and they come down to one spot. And if you just pop tethers on it, you can constantly just keep refreshing it and get the super back. And if you have multiple NIGHTSTALKERs, it's just ridiculous. Like, at some point, I feel like my PS4 is going to crash. You get down to like 10 FPS. There is just so much explosions and just void anchors going on. And then, of course, on top of that, you're generating a ton of orbs of light for your teammates. Now, of course, this requires the top tree of the NIGHTSTALKER, not the bottom one. The bottom tree is a little bit strange. It does have the bonus orbs of light perk, which would be really helpful. But unfortunately, the way they're kind of laid out, the top tree is basically the best option because it stretches out. Although the bottom one is really good for single targets, so single bosses doing massive damage. Whereas the top tree is where this is going to work best. So honestly, I'm pretty surprised they let you do this inside Destiny 2. I mean, especially with all the ability cooldowns, they massively slowed down in this game. Abilities and supers in general are pretty slow, but these boots basically just break the rules and make it even more crazy than Destiny 1, which I can't believe, to be honest. I mean, one of my favorite things to do inside Destiny 1 was tethering large clumps of enemies, and with 3 NIGHTSTALKERs you could chain supers and get supers pretty quickly, but this just takes it even more to the next level. You can get supers instantly, no cooldown. So on top of that, it's also worth noting you do get your nades back as well, something a lot of people forget about. But of course, this isn't just your super, it's your nades. So both smoke grenades you should use in combination to do the most amount of damage. So what I like to do is throw both my nades on the same spot that I'm going to tether before I pop the super itself, so I'm empty, and then pop the tether, you string all the enemies together, and then it gives you your energies back. Then you have another grenade, throw both those, pop another tether, and it basically cycles in that fashion. But you need to make sure you're throwing both your nades before you tether, that way you're making most use of the abilities, and that way you don't even have to use weapons. You don't even have to shoot the enemies, because they're going to be constantly pulled in. Now, something else that seems to be pretty new, or definitely improved in Destiny 2, is the ability for NIGHTSTALKER tethers to draw the enemies into one point, and it's almost like a vacuum. It sucks them all in towards the tether, whereas I don't remember that happening too much in Destiny 1. If it was very subtle. But in Destiny 2, the anchor just pulls them all into this one point, which makes it even better to throw nades. So you throw them both in one spot, the enemies get pulled in, and they just melt and die because they're just getting destroyed by the nades. So these exotic boots, the ORPHEUS rig, are literally the epitome of a NIGHTSTALKER in PvE, just tethering a massive clump, and I'm so happy something like this exists in Destiny 2. I don't think I've taken them off since I got them, and I'm probably never going to be honest. So let's talk about the limitations of these exotics. Now, obviously, these aren't completely perfect, and not every situation you're going to have like 10 plus enemies able to tether. Obviously, some situations, enemies kind of trickle in, there's 1 or 2, maybe a boss with high damage, and that situation, this isn't going to be the best. But even still, if you tether 3, 4 enemies, you're still going to get maybe half your super back, which is obviously better than getting none, because again, it takes a really long time to get your supercharge in this game, especially in PvE. So again, obviously not every single situation inside PvE you're going to have a massive clump of enemies like this, and especially you need to know the encounter and know when the enemies spawn to make maximum full advantage of it. But even like I said, if you get like 3 or 4 enemies, it's still going to give you like a third to a half of your super bar back, and of course your grenades and melee. So it's definitely worth it, even if you're not going against massive groups of enemies. 1 or 2 is still going to do a massive amount of help and be a little push towards that next super. So I also want to compare these boots to some of the other hunter exotics and kind of rank them in tiers in terms of utility, what they're good for, and basically which are the best hunter exotics. So the one thing I do think is a pretty close contender is the Radiant Flux chest piece. This is of course for the Arc Strider. Now I've mentioned this before, and this thing is absolutely incredible. basically boost the damage and also duration of your Arc Strider. And obviously Arc Strider compared to NIGHTSTALKER isn't quite as good in PvE, so obviously that's a little bit of a disadvantage. Now, something else I haven't used much myself, but I've heard quite a lot about, is the Lucky Raspberry chest piece. Now, this grants the ability of increased chaining abilities of the Arc Bolt grenade, and has a chance to recharge it each time it deals damage. Now, I've heard pretty good things about this, and it says a chance to recharge it, but it seems to happen quite often, where it just gives you a free grenade back, simply for hitting things with the Arc Bolt. So it seems very, very good, and this is definitely another good piece for the Arc Strider. Now, in terms of the boots category, there's pretty much no competition because the other two exotic boots are really not that great, if I'm honest. The Lucky Pants, these give you increased hand cannon ready speed and initial accuracy. Now, I tried these out in Crucible for a couple games and I really couldn't notice much of a difference. I mean, obviously it's going to be a little help, but I just didn't really think it was that drastic to warrant an exotic. And the Stompies, unfortunately, are quite a disappointment. Improves the double jump to provide more height. I mean, no one ever goes for increased height. Everyone goes for better control or triple jump. So these are really, really useless. Now, obviously, for its purpose of simply improving the height, it does that very well. Of course, it makes you jump unbelievably high. When you have the high jump on and put these on, you can jump basically to the moon. So if for some reason you wanted to jump high, these, of course, would help you. But the problem is that no one ever wants to have increased height on a hunter jump. You want better control or triple jump for more incremental jumps. But in terms of boots, the Orpheus rig are definitely by far the best. Now, there's also the Celestial Nighthawk, which I have. This, of course, is very classic, very simple, gives you a ton of damage on one golden gun shot. But there you go, those are some of the Hunter exotics and my thoughts on them. In comparison to the Orpheus rig, my opinion, definitely the best exotic boots the Hunter has ever seen. These things are so much fun. Do let me know down below in the comment section, what do you think? Have you used these yet? If you enjoyed the video, a like rating would always be much appreciated. If you want to watch a video I made about some new DLC information and the Trials of the 9 game mode, then click the image on screen right now, and I'll see you guys next one.